Welcome in to the Vinyl Community Podcast.
What's up, everybody? Alex here. Welcome back to another video, and welcome to what I believe is the most special video in my humble, short, mostly useless YouTube existence. And that is an interview with a rock star. We'll call him that. So I won't spend too much time in this intro because I want to get into the meat of the interview, but do want to provide a little bit of some backstory as to how we got here and why I was so passionate about this interview and this conversation. So rewind however many years ago, I forget. I was really getting into record collecting. I was really getting into music, and I was really getting into power pop mostly. I mean, that was like, as some of you know, that's like one of my favorite genres. Love power pop. And that was sort of coinciding with also getting into more and more bands from the state of Ohio. That's where I'm from. So there was like this newfound pride that was all about wanting to research and look into bands that were from Ohio. And I have a family friend who says, well, have you checked out Blue Ash? Never heard of Blue Ash in my entire life. And he says, well, you have to check them out. If you can get that debut, get that debut. And a few weeks later, I was in a local record store and I found that debut from 1973 on Mercury Records called No More, No Less. I listened to this and was absolutely blown away. If you like the Raspberries, if you like Big Star, if you like Badfinger, all those power pop groups from the early to mid 70s that we love. This is right up there. I became instantly hooked with this record. Yeah, the story is cool. They're from Youngstown, Ohio. It's got that hometown, home state kind of vibe to it. But for me, all of that aside, this was one of the best power pop records I had ever heard in my life. And I would put this up against any of those records from the 70s. 1000% truly believe that. That was in 1973. My interview that you're about to see is with Frank Secich, seen there, who is the bass player, backing vocalist, songwriter. He's also a composer. He's a producer. He's an author with 2 biographies or autobiographies that we'll talk about actually in the interview itself. So that was 1973. We'll tell a little bit about the story of what happened with Mercury Records. But in 1977, they released this record on Playboy Records called Front Page News. Again, really strong, great power pop record. Amazing. You'll have to watch the interview to see what happens after that. But a lot of you people might know who are punk fans about this band and this record right here. Another Ohio connection with the Dead Boys with their debut, Young, Loud, and Snotty. One of the best sort of punk albums of all time. It helped define the sound. But the lead singer, Stiv Bators, who's from Youngstown, ended up obviously... The Dead Boys would break up, and in the 80s, Stiv would actually connect with Frank on this record called Disconnected that came out in 1980. Stiv bringing in that sort of punk background, connects with Frank, who is a hometown friend that he knew since he was a teenager, to kind of bring in this pop, more commercial, more accessible influence. And they put out this record in 1980 called Disconnected, an amazing power pop-ish record, but with a lot of punk attitude and influence, and was absolutely amazing. Throughout the 80s and the 90s, Frank would do a lot of producing work. He would start another band called Deadbeat Poets. And then more recently, it's been a lot of archival work with Blue Ash, specifically with a record like this. It's called Hearts and Arrows. This is a double LP with a bonus 7-inch. An amazing compilation. Some of the stuff that ended up on those records, other stuff that was never released. This is still in print. This is from You Are the Cosmos Records and runs really, I think it's like $20 or something like that. So get this. And so wanted to just kind of run through that really quickly before the interview with Frank Secich. It was just amazing. I mean, Blue Ash has become one of my favorite bands, and their story to me is so... it's just so indicative of sort of the rock and roll history, right? The what ifs, the what happens, the bad luck, the good luck, all of those different things. And so I just cannot thank Frank enough for him taking the time to do this. I will have all of the info for ordering anything that Frank is involved in down in the description below. Please, if you like 70s rock, if you like power pop, if you just like good music, if you like biographies, please support these artists that are still going strong and making their own art and doing all of the things, and making YouTube people like me who drink beer and show records, have a great time, and feel really just honored to have these conversations. Without further ado, please enjoy the interview with Frank Secich. What's up, everybody? Alex here. Welcome back to a very special edition of the show. I am here with Frank Secich from Blue Ash, from a million other projects that we will jump into. Frank and I have been going back and forth over the past several months, and we're going to dive into what I think will be a fun conversation about rock and roll and Frank's career and all that has been and all that is still happening and will continue to happen. So, Frank, just thanks so much for being here. I really appreciate it. I'm glad to be here, Alex. Awesome. So, for those who might not know, and if for the people out there who have watched my channel before, that's probably my introduction into Frank's work specifically is truly, I mean, I'm not just saying this just because you're here, but is truly one of my favorite albums of all time, and what I think is arguably the best power pop record of the 70s, and that's this right here. And so I'm sure we will talk a lot about this. And yes, this is my beat up copy. Like, this has been through the mud and drug all over the place, but I think it adds character to it, But we'll get to this in 1973 in a second. But, I'm curious, Frank, from your perspective, growing up in, I guess that's West Pennsylvania, suburbs of Youngstown, Ohio. Yeah, Sharon, Pennsylvania. Yeah. First memories of music and sort of falling into this world. How did we get here? Well, in the early 60s, I liked a lot of folk music. My sister used to have a lot of really good folk albums, Dylan and Peter, Paul, Mary, Ian and Sylvia, and I really got into that. But that's my sister Cindy, my older sister. But when the Beatles hit, that was the first one. That was it for me. I just wanted to be in a band. I was 12 years old when they hit in February of 1964, and that was it. I was just spellbound. Wanted to be in a band, but couldn't really afford a guitar, so I got a harmonica because a lot of the songs had harmonica, and learned all those. And then a little while later, my mom bought me a Harmony Monterey guitar, and started a band with my friends in the neighborhood. Yeah, it's so funny just hearing how many people's stories truly starts with, I saw the Beatles on Ed Sullivan, and that was it. It was like. That's exactly how I start my book, Circumstantial Evidence. That's the opening line with my father talking about the Beatles, and he kept turning the channel off when we were watching it that night. Let's see what's on, ABC, something good on NBC. Put that channel back on. Right. Well, so did you even know that was coming, or was we were flipping around and saw that? No. Knew because the record had already been played a lot in the month before that, and by mid to late January, I Want to Hold Your Hand was a hit everywhere. We used to go ice skating in Bill Park here, and they just blasted out on the speakers, and it was everywhere. So everybody knew the Beatles were coming. Yeah. And I mean that, and you talk about this a lot, and in previous interviews and in your books, for you, I guess, that was probably the start. You started some of the folkier stuff. I know you're a big Bob Dylan fan as well, but I mean, do you sort of credit British Invasion of those bands really kicked you into gear? Yeah, the British Invasion once in 64 and early 65 really kicked it into gear. But I went to see my first concert in Cleveland on November 12th, 1965, and it was Bob Dylan on his first electric tour. And to this day, it's the best concert I've ever seen. Wow. Tremendous, and that was really it. That I was done with school then in my head, algebra and French didn't mean anything anymore to me. I just wanted to be in a band and play music and write songs, which was cool too. So I'm glad I did that. So that was Bringing It All Back Home. No, Highway 61 revisited. Highway 61 then, and I think that was Positively 4th Street around that time. Oh, yeah. Live too. He did that. And Ballad of a Thin Man played the piano on both of those, and had the Hawks backing him, which was later the band. Yeah. Absolutely fabulous. I saw him in Cleveland Music Hall, and I had a ticket in the balcony, in the first row of the balcony, and the sound was just perfect. Oh, man. The most perfect concert I've ever been to. And as people know, I mean, the history of Bob going electric, I mean, not a ton of people were loving it, obviously, as much as you were.
No. There were a lot of old beatnik Cleveland people there, and they were kind of even making fun of me. Here's all little Johnny Beetle. He's getting the teeny boppers now. And I said, "Oh, shut up, so you don't know what you're talking about." And I was really like the electric stuff. And Dylan, even in a famous interview, and I've seen different things that he said, the only places he didn't get booed were Texas and Ohio and Minneapolis on that tour.
Wow, that's.
There wasn't a boo that time. He came out, did an acoustic set, and then took an intermission, no warm band or anything. Then did the electric set, and it was absolutely spellbinding.
Wow, what it's yeah. And so that was the moment for sure that you're like, I'm done. I'm done with school. I'm done with it. Let's do this.
Well, I stayed at my sister's dorm. She had gotten me the ticket up in Cleveland, and I took the bus up there. My dad came and picked me up on a Sunday then. But on the Saturday, I went to Record Rendezvous, the famous place in downtown Cleveland. I bought the one Dylan album I didn't have, which was Freewheelin', I think. And then I bought 3 singles, The Stones' Get Off of My Cloud, Do You Believe in Magic by 11 Spoonful, and Donovan's Colors. I still have the Stones, the album, the Dylan album, and the Donovan thing, but I don't have the 11 Spoonful. I actually think Stiv Bators might have stole it from me.
That's why, that's why everybody was writing their names all over these covers, right? So people didn't know.
Yeah.
So that takes us to 65 through 65. Talk a little bit, if you can, about the obviously other types of music. Whether it was the Kinks or some of these other British bands, and how that influenced starting and getting into bands in the Blue Ash, which was 69, just a few years later.
Yeah, actually in 66, started the first real band with Jim Kinzer, who was later in Blue Ash, the lead singer, and still is to this day. He and I are the only ones left of the original guys still doing it. And Jeff Rosianna, who was our second drummer, so it was kind of like a baby Blue Ash in 66. And we were together a couple of years and played parties and dances and stuff like that. We still weren't very good yet, but we were even writing a couple of our own songs. And then I joined a band called the Mother Goose Band and played all summer in Geneva on the Lake in 1968 with John Haney, Dave Magnato, and Marty Magner. And then after I quit Mother Goose in 69 to start Blue Ash with Jim Kinzer, and Stiv Bators was kind of my replacement in the Mother Goose Band. So it's kind of an incestuous kind of guys in bands like that going back and forth. So he started with them and later went to Cleveland, started Frankenstein and Dead Boys. But we started Blue Ash in 1969 in the summertime.
We'll circle back to that when we get to what you were doing around 1980 with Stiv, because one of my questions was going to be about how your relationship with him, how that came about, if you knew each other from growing up or all that type of stuff. So.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So. So 69 rolls around with the formal start of sort of, Blue Ash. I mean, I guess, and I'm always so curious of hearing these types of stories. About, and for people watching, I'm sure you know this too, like when I was really getting into, collecting records and going back in time and learning all these things and then learning a little bit more about Ohio history, that was when Blue Ash sort of became for me of like, they were the musicians band. They were the collectors band. They were, at least from people outside of this very sort of centralized area of Ohio, New York, Pennsylvania, that sort of area. And so when I started getting into it, I had a buddy of mine who's up in the Cleveland area who's all about the Cleveland rock history. And he's like, you've got to dig into Youngstown and check out the Youngstown bands. Specifically, you got to check out Blue Ash. And, since then it was just been, I guess, full steam ahead for me. But what was it like for those first several years? Sort of, I'm sure, ton of live shows, ton of writing, kind of all before, I guess, 73, but probably recorded 72.
Yeah.
Was this?
What happened was in summer 69, we started Blue Ash. We had some original songs too, because I'd been writing them during the Mother Goose Band days, but they were always a cover band. Never wanted to do any originals. So we took a trip in June of '69, me and Jim and a couple of our friends, to Nashville. We kept trying to name the group on the way down on Interstate 71. Since you're in Columbus, you'll know this. So we're going and we're seeing all these names, and we're saying the Wolf Ledges, Ganada. No, it's not going to be that. Finally, I said, that's it. We'll name the band after the next sign we see. And Jim points to Blue Ash right outside of Cincinnati. So that's how we got it. So then we started practicing, all summer, and went over to see Jeff Jones, who was a big booking agent. He had Glass Harp and Human Beings, all these bands, Pied Pipers. And we just did a cappella kind of songs right in his living room. And he thought we were characters, so he signed us on and started getting us jobs. So the first year we played like 100 gigs together. And then our guitar player, Bill Yendrick, quit the band to go to Kent State. He wanted to be a teacher or something. So we were devastated and we didn't know what to do. And then my mom came in and she says, why don't you get Cupid Bartlett, Bill Bartlett? My mom's best friend, Mary, was Cupid's aunt. So we thought, well, great idea. So I called him. And I said, hey, Cupid, I said, this is Frank's, and he caught me in middle name. He goes, I've been waiting for this call for a week. He goes, I accept. So we hit it off really great. He was my songwriting partner, and then he was the major catalyst that really got Blue Ash going.
Yeah.
So we started becoming really popular in Ohio, Pennsylvania, New York, Virginia, West Virginia. We played 100 gigs the first year. The second year, we played 200. And then we were playing 250 gigs a year by 1972. So we're talking songs. The first time we ever went in the studio was in 1970, and we recorded a song that was a tribute to Janis Joplin and Morrison, who had just died a few months earlier. I mean, Jimi Hendrix, I'm sorry. Jimi Hendrix and Janis Joplin. And that was down in Philadelphia with Bob Mack, who ran all the teenage places in Pittsburgh and was the discoverer of Tommy James and that hit for Hanky Pank. That didn't get sold to any labels. Nobody wanted it. But it's a great song, and it's going to be on that Blue Ash oldies thing coming out of Peppermint, starting it off. That'll be the first one. Rarities. So we started recording at Peppermint, doing demos in 1972, and sent them out to all the companies. And to our surprise, 4 companies wanted to sign us: Mercury, Polydor, MGM, and Metro Media, which Merv Griffin owned. So that's how we got into the 70 and 73. And Paul Nelson from Mercury came down and signed us up, and we started recording it in the beginning of 73.
Well, this is kind of, I think, just something I've always been fascinated with, so you I'm sure obviously over those years of putting, probably playing 500 shows in a matter of 2.5 years or whatever that number was.
Yeah.
How much did your playing as a band, just tighten up in terms of really preparing you to go into the studio to record that debut?
Oh, we got so tight. Actually, when you have a small band like ours with just guitars, bass, and drums, the rhythm section, me and David Evans, by the time 2 years was up, we were so tight that we could think what each other was doing.
Yeah.
And you get like jazz musicians almost, because you're playing it so much. And then we were writing our own songs, and we were still doing some covers, but we were peppering a lot of our songs in with it. Like Have You Seen Her and Silver Horses, Day and Night, things like that became popular later on. And yeah, we're so tight. So when we got into the recording, it was no problem at all. I mean, we had really good, tight rhythm section, good rhythm with everything. So it was great.
So you're in the studio now, and I'm curious, was it a choice, or did it just work out that way? This was recorded at Peppermint, correct?
Yes. Mercury Peppermint, we had a production contract with them, and so they got us signed on the first demos that we made, and we could go in every day for 2 days free and record things. But when we got signed to Mercury, they wanted us to go up to their studio in New York City, and they were going to have Michael Brown from the Left Bank produce the album.
Okay.
But something came up with him contractually, and a couple of the engineers from Mercury came down to Peppermint, and they liked Peppermint better than their own studio in New York, which was great. So they go, just do it here. So we got John Grazier, who produced the stuff, who worked at Peppermint, was in the band Brainchild, too, if you ever heard of him. And he was our producer. And then Gary Ramey, who owns Peppermint and still owns Peppermint to this day, it was the engineer. So we and Paul Nelson was the executive producer for Mercury. He came down all during the week. We would record Monday through Friday, then play on the weekends, and he would fly back to New York. And it took us 4 weeks of Monday through Fridays to record it and 2 weeks for mixing. So we were done in March, and it came out like May 15th.
Wow. It's just, funny, like looking at this now and hearing the story about it. It's wild. So record comes out. You all have now just recorded your first full length. You've been in the studio, recorded this record, but you have at least a regional reputation, right, of playing all these shows all over the place over the previous years. What happens when this comes out? I mean, is this the story we hear so much about marketing and about distribution and all those different things? What happens?
Well, we did really good in our own areas, Cleveland, Detroit, Miami. It was a real hit. But we couldn't break the big markets like New York and Los Angeles. We had to sell 25,000 copies to get a second album. We sold 19,500. So they had a big argument in Mercury, but the suits there, not the A&R guys, Paul Nelson and Bud Scott, loved us. Everybody wanted to keep us. Yeah. And they let us record like a second album, but it never got released. Then they said, we'll put out another single, which they did, Anytime at All, and She's So Nice in 1974. Even Dick Clark played it on American Bandstand, but the promotion guys really didn't know what to do with us with the New York Dolls. They just hadn't a clue. It was a different thing that was happening at the time. Like you were holding up the record. I'll show you a funny thing. We go up to WMMS with Paul Nelson and me and John Grazier, and Denny Sanders is on the air. This is how cool things were back there. And we're behind the glasses when it's on Euclid Avenue down there. And Paul goes like this to him, like, show him the record. He goes, come in. So he's playing the Led Zeppelin album, and he scratches it right across the vinyl. He goes, Blue Ash guys just came in with a new record. He goes, we're going to give it a spin. So he plays Abracadabra and Dusty Old Fairgrounds without even listening to it. And we thought that was cool. So they were playing it regularly. And we had a lot of airplay in Cleveland, and even got in all the rack jobber stores like Woolworths and all the music stores and everything. And Detroit had a lot of airplay. We could play there, St. Louis. And we never got the big coasts. We're all over the Midwest and Canada and everything. And eventually got dropped about a year and a half later by Mercury in summer of 74.
Yeah. Was there plans, so say you sell that $25,000 unit or 25,000 units. Was there already a plan in place to sort of say, okay, it's time to start thinking about record 2? Or was it more, oh no, we're going to tour internationally now. We're going to get the whole thing going on the road?
Yeah, we got a booking agency, ABC Booking. They started booking us all across the country. We were playing with Stooges and Ted Nugent, all these people, Nitty Gritty Dirt Band, everywhere. They just, the suits lost interest in it because it wasn't a big seller like Rod Stewart, Bachman Turner. They just didn't know what to do. And Paul Nelson fought for us to the very end. And we recorded almost a half an album, but it was never released. So we retained those tapes, which there's some of the stuff that's still at Peppermint belongs to that. So then we tried to get on other labels. We had a lot of friends at Columbia. They flew us up there, did an audition in Studio A. Everybody came in, loved us, thought we were going to get signed. Fell apart at the last moment. RCA, the same thing. Wow. Then Nat Weiss, if you're familiar with him from Emperor Records, he had the jazz label, and he had the Romantics on the label. He came to Youngstown for a weekend. He was the Beatles' attorney, too, American attorney. He was a cool guy and a friend of Brian Epstein's. So he came and hung out with us for a week. Loved the band, was going to sign us. Then something happened with financial things with him. He couldn't do it. And I called him about a month later and see what was going. And he apologized, said he just try to go somewhere else because he didn't want to hold us back. So eventually we got approached by Steve Friedman, who produced Left End and used to work at Peppermint too when we first got there. And he was Left End's manager and producer, and he signed us up to a production deal, and we did 4 sides in Miami. He took them to LA and got us signed to Playboy Records. We finished the album out there in the summer of 77.
Right. And that is this album here, Front Page News. Now, another great record, and this would actually, I guess, close out the formal studio LPs from the band, which we'll talk about in a second here. I will show you this because I think this is funny. This is a promo copy that I have, and it has still the
wow, I don't even have one of those. That's
the
cool.
Blue Ash sort of promo.
Yeah, I remember those. Yeah.
Promo insert, which there was something on here. You know, these are always kind of fun, right? Let's see. Here, it's short. Blue Ash, Playboy Records' newest recording group, had its birth in late 60s in the Midwest, creating a driving sound that had the elements of English-flavored pop and an acid rock beat.
That's cool. Well, that was great because Playboy was distributed by CBS too, so all our friends in Columbia were working the record. So we ended up getting a regional hit with all over the place with "Look at You Now." They put a single out first, and all over the South, the entire state of Texas, it hit top 10 in almost every market.
Wow.
And number one in a lot of them, all over Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, Georgia, Missouri, Oklahoma, big hit there, and all over Pennsylvania and Ohio, and Michigan too. So they flew us out to complete the album because they said sold a lot of singles. The albums came out in October, the same week the Dead Boys album came out, the first album, and in mid-October 1977, and it started selling really well. It ended up selling about 54,000 copies by Christmas time, but the first of the year, Playboy Records went out of business. You have to just pull the plug on it because he was losing too much money, on it. So there we were out in the cold again. That was kind of the last straw for Blue Ash in '78. We recorded a few more things, which will be on the Peppermint release too, Dinner at Mr. Billy's that's coming out this year. But by '79, we had spent 10 years on it and had a great career, met some great people, toured all around everywhere. But Stiv Bators got a hold of me and wanted me to start writing songs with him in '78. So I started doing that, and the other guys started doing, they had families and everything started. So for volume Blue Ash 1.0, more coming later on.
Yeah, I mean, I gotta, ask. We'll get into the next step with Stiv and everything going on there after Dead Boy stuff. But I mean, I gotta wonder. I mean, these types of stories, I think about too, and I don't know if this has kept you up at night over the years, thinking of the what ifs and all that kind of stuff. But I don't know. There seems to be, when that happens with Playboy Records, so you have a single that is successful in all the markets that the debut was not successful in.
Yeah.
You're selling more records than the day. You're checking all the boxes. Things are moving again, and they're moving 4 years after the fact. And then you just feel the rug kind of get pulled out. I mean, how did you? Was it just anger and frustration? Was it, oh well, that was fun? I'm just curious how you sort of deal with that.
We were actually dumbstruck because we couldn't believe how good things were going, and it was just done, And wow, that's it. That's our life.
It's interesting too. One of the things I do want to mention is just sort of sonically the difference between No More, No Less and Front Page News. I mean, 4 years is a long time. A lot of things changed. Now we're moving into, this is obviously not a punk record, but we're moving into the punk sound. Post-punk even is coming in a certain number of years. It's just a very different time period musically than 1973 was. Still, I think, a really, really great record here. But, I think this obviously has some more of the production-y type stuff. There's some strings added, all those different things.
Steve Friedman, who produced it, he was playing Phil Spector, he had some good ideas with this stuff, and we liked him a lot, but there were some things in the production we didn't like. But I mean, it was okay. It was a good record, and like I said, it was commercial. When people would put it on the radio, people liked it. It started with Stiv, and he wanted to write some songs. So he comes over at Thanksgiving when he's visiting his mom, and I was living in Sharon, PA with my wife. I had an apartment on the West Hill, and we started writing songs. He brought over his guitar, and I had mine, and we wrote the last year that night. And then he wanted to do some recording, so we went up to Cleveland, and me and Jimmy Zero from the Dead Boys, Johnny Blitz on drums, and Stiv, we cut about 3 or 4 demos the last year. And It's Cold Outside, which has been re-released again by Bump and Munster Records, which is out now. This is the new edition.
Heck yeah.
So he took the tapes to LA, and we got signed by Greg Shaw at Bump. And I'm wearing a Bump shirt too. I just talked to his old wife Susie today, and
that's a great shirt.
He sent me a bomb shirt today, so I thanked her for it.
I love that. Well, yeah, and now it's, this is the stuff that I get really excited about. Do you call Youngstown area is difficult. It's a lot like, I would correlate it to my family is from Toledo, Ohio. And a lot of Toledo pretty much, they almost associate more with Michigan than the state of Ohio, which is funny because if you look back in history, Toledo actually belonged to Michigan and they traded it with Ohio for the Upper Peninsula. The history lesson. But, it's like, okay, the blue ash that has now, gone away, sadly. But on the completely sort of other end, you have the Dead Boys, who arguably released one of the greatest and first, punk records in the world. We'll get to this in a second. Just got this last week. I wanted to talk from you and Stiv, that relationship. Was that something, because he's also from the Youngstown area too.
He grew up in Girard, about 6 or 7 miles from where I live.
Okay.
And I knew him when I was a teenager. I'd met him at the teen dances, carousel teen clubs and all that in Youngstown. So I met him when I was about 15 years old, I think.
Okay.
And in the summer of, I think it was 69, I was the first one that ever brought him on stage. I was getting a pickup band for this little festival that Jim Baker was the MC of. He was a local star here. I picked up Myron Grumbacher, who later played with Pat Benatar and got famous third, Steve Acker from Law. I think it was Bill Yendrick from Blue Ash and me. And I picked up Stiv, who said he could sing, and he was a harmonica player. But he didn't have a harmonica. He would just make harmonica sound.
Well, harmonicas are in the right key, so it works. He could just do that,
And we would do the Stones or something, not Fade Away, and he would do the harmonica thing, and it sounded amazing. He's carrying on, doing all this stuff. He threw a mic stand up in the air during it, and he hit himself in the head, and head was bleeding. I knew he was hurt pretty bad, but he had a can of whipped cream. He started shaking that in his crotch area, and I thought, oh my God, this guy's nuts. So anyway, people went nuts over him. And he went into Mother Goose Band after that. I took him to the hospital that afternoon. I think he had to get 12 stitches in his head, something like that. I took him up to St. E's Hospital. But, that was his first time on a real stage, other than maybe some, garagey things he did. But that was it. And he started getting a name for himself.
So he does Dead Boys stuff, Young, Loud, and Snotty in 77. They do, I think, a second one in 78. But then he connects with you, post Blue Ash stuff, and says, hey, I want to do something a little bit different. I want you involved. Let's talk about this, which, again, I just got. And I actually was completely unfamiliar with this until you mentioned it, and love it.
That's the Disconnected album. It came out we did that in 1980, and I was touring with Stiv and the Dead Boys for the years of must have 79 and 80. And in August of 1980, we did that album. That's called Disconnected. And that was a really critically acclaimed album that was released all over the world. It's been in France, England, Finland, Canada, everywhere, and Japan. And now this is a special release from Spain. It just came out a few days ago, actually. It's the official release date. It's supposed to be July 5th today, but it's been out for a couple of weeks. And that's on Munster Records in coordination with Bob. And that one has a couple extra songs on it. It's got a really nice liner notes that I did and a booklet inside. And this part here, I just got from Bob. Blanc is selling it too, but they're giving all kind of extra goodies, like there's stickers and posters and letters and stuff. So you can either get it from Munster overseas, or you can get it from Bomp here, and you get all the extra goodies in it too.
All types of.
You got it from Bomp. Great.
I did, yeah. What I thought was really cool was that you. Let's see here. This is the stuff I love right here. Right. This is the hobby right now. This was. Didn't you write this?
Not the obituary. I wrote the inside. The
liners then, yeah?
I wrote all the liners, yeah. That's Greg Shaw there, who owned Bond. Passed away.
Gotcha. Oh, yeah. There's a lot of goodies in here.
All kind of stuff. Yeah, I wrote the liner notes that are all on that. And they're going to put another one out in a few months, probably before Christmas, with all his pop singles. It's Cold Outside, Not That Way Anymore. And it's going to be called Pop Goes the Weasel, which Greg Shaw always wanted to do a Stiv Bators album called that, which I thought was hilarious. So they're finally going to use that, doing that too, because a couple of years ago, Billy Joe Armstrong from Green Day recorded "Not That Way Anymore."
Oh, very cool.
On his solo album, and did a video on it. But he was doing a video and a song each week during the coronavirus shutdown. So cool. So that was released all over the world. And that was a really nice compliment for me and Stiv writing.
Yeah, I was going to say, for the viewers that don't know, and I think a bunch of people in my camp that are big power pop fans. It's kind of similar actually hearing similarities, I think, in the Blue Ash story with the Big Star story. It was like these critically acclaimed albums. The people who hear them love them, but there's just these regional distribution type. They don't sell enough at the time, and now everybody's looking back retroactively. And, to find an original #1 record, I mean, that's like a $700 item right now, And so
it's crazy that Around Again album that we put out in 2004 of all the rarities from Peppermint, it goes for £450 in England now. I only gave them a limited thing where they could just make 5,000 of them. They sold that and they never printed it.
Never did again. Wow.
Peppermint stuff that's going to be coming out. They're going to be putting a series of albums out. The first one will be at dinner at Mr. Billy's, and it'll start with that Bob Max song I talked about. Yeah. Some really rare Peppermint stuff nobody's ever seen. And it'll also feature Jazel Jane, which was recorded at Peppermint in #74, and that was featured in the hit series that's still going on, Daisy Jones and the Six. And we're in the #1 episode in that.
Wow. Okay. I remember watching that series, but I'll have to go back and check that out now. Yeah.
Daisy is writing in her diary. She's deciding to become a pop star, writing her poems, and she's writing in our song Jazel Jane starts with the drum intro, and they segue it to the Dunn Brothers, and they're playing their first gig in Pittsburgh. And it's playing at the party. Our song is playing at the party in Pittsburgh. So it's in there for about 35, 40 seconds. It's real cool.
Man.
Go back and watch that. That's cool.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I was going to say for the people, power pop ways, it's like I've been obviously recommending Blue Ash, forever of, anybody who likes anything within that realm, whether it's, the Raspberries or Big Star or, any of those types of bands. This disconnected from Stiv, I think it's interesting because obviously it sounds nothing like it doesn't sound anything like Young, Loud, and Snotty. It's definitely kind of his version, your version of obviously quote unquote a power pop record. But to me, it's like a perfect bridge record because it still sounds like Stiv singing. It, you know what I mean? Like there's still that sort of that punky attitude to it, but with these harmonies and with these melodies and with all these different sort of songwriting aspects that weren't part of it. This was a great listen for me, and I'd never heard it before.
Oh, that's cool. I get a lot of email almost every day on Disconnected. People really love that album, and it keeps going. It keeps selling everywhere, and it keeps being released again. Not only that, the Blue Ash stuff is out everywhere too. They got this double album from Spain. Yet Hip Record has it.
Yeah.
Hearts and Arrows. Oh, you got one too.
Oh yeah.
Cool. And
with the bonus 7, you need the bonus 7-inch, right?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. They got the extra thing in. Boy, you got a lot of stuff. You really did your research.
I try.
Did good, Alex. Yeah, they have that, and then Get Hip's putting a series of singles out. Like I said, they're putting the Peppermint things out in a series of those, and also No More No Less is back, a colored vinyl too. From Europe.
Oh, very cool. That's great. Yeah, because I know that was finally reissued on CD for the first time in like the mid 2000s, right?
Yeah.
So now it has gotten an official repressing on vinyl now, though. Yeah.
The vinyl now, and the thing 2008 Collector's Choice put it out.
Okay.
So it's just been staying in the grist mill. It's there, Keeps going.
And I will say for this too, I mean, obviously, I would recommend No More No Less to anybody. To me, that is a must-have 70s record for sure. But I think in terms of comps go, I mean, this has a ton of stuff because it's pulling from those records. It's pulling from a lot of unreleased stuff. It is too, there's no filler. It is two jam-packed records, and then kind of some cool bonus acoustic stuff on the 7-inch too. So, I mean, I think this is still in print. I believe this is from Cosmos, which is another Spanish label, I think.
Yeah, it's on a Spanish label. You Are the Cosmos. You can get it anywhere around the world there. And Get Hip has all the Blue Ash stuff and Deadbeat Poets too. So
Okay. Perfect.
yeah.
Get hip then. Yeah. And I'll have all the links to all the stuff in the description of the video. So
Definitely. Yeah. Yep.
So, yeah, I mean, and that takes us, I guess, to sort of some of the projects that are going on. We've mentioned Peppermint a lot, but we're going to keep mentioning Peppermint. They're a pretty new thing for me that I actually, heard kind of from you. And then it was one of those things that once you hear about it the first time, then you magically start hearing about it, everywhere. I'll show, because I want to hear obviously about what Blue Ash has got around the corner, but this was something that I want to hear you talk about Deadbeat Poets for sure. Yeah.
This is Glass Harp. No, not Glass Harp. Right, that one. Wrong one. This is the same color. This is Glass Harp. They did in like 1968 when Jeff Jones was their manager, before Danny Pecchio was in the band, Steve Marklin was. It's a fantastic album. It's more of a pop kind of Glass Harp. Peppermint put this out. They put a Left End album out too, and they put this out, Rat Race. Okay. Yep. And it has all the Banky Brothers, Left End, everybody out like that, all the Youngstown guys, Blue Ash, a lot of real cool stuff.
And now what we are patiently waiting for is the project that you and Blue Ash have going on with Peppermint that we can expect sometime, hopefully in the fall, later this year.
Yeah, they're working on it right now. I know they've already cleaned some of the tracks up and everything. So I know they're working on it. They've got artwork going on already. And so, yeah, it'll be pretty quick.
That's amazing. And then, one of the last things I want to mention, too, is that you have 2 books currently also in print and for sale on probably a bunch of places, but Amazon specifically for people who like it easy. Yeah.
Okay. I got all this props here. My first book is Circumstantial Evidence. And these are on High Voltage Publishing out of Australia. These are available everywhere. It's available Amazon, Barnes & Noble. It's even available at Walmart and on their online things in Target. You can get this anywhere. The newest one came out last year, just at Christmas time, and this is not that way anymore. And that's available there too. A lot of good stories in there, a lot of fun Stiv stories. And I have a lot of fun with it. I've toured with both books and go and just do acoustic sets and go into bookstores and everything, tell stories, play the acoustic guitar, and have a blast. Yeah, pick up the books. You'll love them. A lot of fun stories.
For sure. Mine are on the way. Tried to get them here in time for the conversation, but they will be here this weekend. And so just barely missed it, but mine are on the way, and definitely want everybody to be able to check those out, especially those people. I think, to me, what I'm always most fascinated by is hearing the stories, right? Like, I just love hearing the stories of just your career and the people that you were connected with, and those books are full of them, and it's just great stuff.
I have to mention, too, the Deadbeat Poets. I've been playing the band Deadbeat Poets since 2007, and we've had like 7 albums out, so you can get those everywhere, too. Get half pass them all. 3 of them are in vinyl, so a lot of good stuff on that, and a lot of good bands. Terry Hartman was in the band. He passed away in 2021. And we have John Lumick now from the Infidels, Pete Revere from the Infidels, and who also owns Amprion Studios, lead guitar, John Corey on drums, and me on rhythm guitar. And when we toured Spain, we did Deadbeat Poets and Blue Ash. And Deadbeat Poets would open up, and then we'd bring Jim Kenzer out and do the Blue Ash songs. It was great. Yeah. They got 2 bands for the price of one.
Yeah. Bring it to Columbus. No, I would drive for that. So it's okay. Yeah.
I'll definitely come down to Columbus the next time I do book tours and everything. Hopefully I can get out in the fall again.
Oh yeah, that would be awesome. And all of these things, I'm going to have to go on Get Hip now and get some of the Deadbeat Poet stuff as well. And obviously look forward to the Blue Ash releases on Peppermint later this year. And anything else that you're involved with. I mean, I've become kind of a completist in that way.
I'll do a few more things. The Blue Ash, Deadbeat Poets is involved in. First of all, the Stiv Bators movie, Stiv, No Compromise, No Regrets, came out in 2019. I've got about 5 songs in there that I wrote. I'm in the thing too, and Jimmy Zero from the Dead Boys, lots of people, from Nikki Turner from Lords of the New Church, all in there doing interviews, funny stuff. That's it, Amazon. And also the Brian Jones DVD, Life and Death of Brian Jones. I got a song in there, Riding the Dog. And the newest one, just last year, Nightclubbing, about Max's Kansas City. There's a Deadbeat Poets song in there. I got a few autographs in there too. So I'm keeping pretty busy for a 73-year-old guy.
Not bad. Yeah, absolutely. Well, Frank, again, I mean, this meant the world to me. I just so appreciate you taking the time, and hopefully, if nothing else, hopefully we get some people turned on to the music and to more of your work, and the people who are already a fan of it are now a bigger fan of it. Just, again, thanks so much for taking the time and chatting with me, and yeah, best of luck to everything going on in the future.
Oh, thanks so much, Alex, and thanks so much for all your research and being so thorough. It was a pleasure talking to you.
Of course, it's what I try to do. Thanks, everybody, for watching. Thanks, Frank, again, and we'll see you all soon.
Take care. Bye-bye.
And that was another trip around the turntable. Thanks for listening to Vinyl Community Podcasts.